Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome back to Wall Street Silver. Joining us today is Nick Barisheff, President and CEO of the BMG Group. Great to see you, Nick.
Good seeing you again. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure having you back on Wall Street Silver, Nick. So, Nick, we're in the middle of a global crisis. We see energy crisis going on and an ongoing war. How dire, in your view, is the situation across the world going into 2023?
Well, it seems to be pretty dire, and it's not being covered by the mainstream media, but particularly for Europe and Germany, um, they're looking at a winter where they're going to be freezing in the dark with no food. I mean, the policies of the various leaders are beyond absurd.
Mm.
Like when you look at what's happening in the Netherlands, they look like they're purposely trying to bankrupt the farmers. Farmers have to cull their cattle because they're farting too much nitrogen. Give me a break.
It's just absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and the farmers are being forced to cut back on their production. And the Netherlands is the number 2 exporter of food in the world, only behind the United States. So taking the Netherlands out has a giant impact on food. And then the lack of energy, the gas, the prices, everything else is causing like deindustrialization in Germany. So you've got companies like BASF, which had their main plant in Germany is 10 square miles.
Wow.
Like 10 square miles for a factory.
That's huge.
And they were teetering on the edge before the Nord Stream pipeline blew up. Now they have no hope, and sooner or later they'll have to shut down. When they shut down, you can't just start up a chemical plant like that overnight. It could take months or years to start it up again. And when you look at this is just one example, and you look at the repercussions, how many people are employed directly and indirectly, and now are facing the winter with little or no energy, no food, and no jobs. So it's like a triple whammy for a lot of the people in Europe.
There's a video that I seen this week too, Nick. There's a school in the Czech Republic. They're not even turning on the heating in the schools. I think it was an elementary or a junior high. They're just handing out blankets to the kids, which is pretty crazy for us to see. And the second largest vegetable producer in Northern Europe shut down because energy prices is too high. Do you think we'll see more of these huge producers shut down because of energy costs?
Well, there's been several, like Ukraine was a significant producer of food, and they're obviously not in any kind of shape to produce anything. So this is going to have huge impacts. And then so many governments are banning nitrogen fertilizer of all things, but the nitrogen fertilizer needs to be made with natural gas and ammonia and so on. And just the shortages of fertilizer is going to lead to crop failures and reduced crops around the world. It just seems that the governments, with rare exception in the Western world, are doing things that are detrimental to their citizens. And when you look at it, it has to be done on purpose, because it's not possible they're that stupid. Really.
Well, do you think you think it's systematic? Because I believe that too.
Yeah. No, I think it is. Like, I mean, you shut down, in the US on the first day of taking office, Biden essentially shuts down the US energy production, and then proceeds to print trillions of dollars. and now you got gas prices going up and inflation going up. Well, what did you think was going to happen from doing those two things? You know,
All that free money, it's not free.
yeah.
So now let's talk about our favorite topic, silver and gold. We're seeing huge moves in silver this week alone. Do you believe this is a breakout or fake out? What do you think we're seeing here, Nick?
Well, it's always hard to tell when you have these kind of unexpected moves like that. You know, like I think I mentioned last week, there was a lot of technical analysts saying, well, gold's poised to go to 15, 1400 and so on. And then you wake up Monday morning and it's up $30, and breaches 1700 and so on. And although the dollar movements of silver are less, but percentage wise, it's moved more, and platinum has moved even more. So these are having direct impacts, and it's not something you can predict. Like we've studied technical analysis, for 20 years that we've been in business, and I come to the conclusion that you're no better off with technical analysis for gold than you would be throwing darts at a dartboard, then maybe technical analysis works for broad-based markets like the S&P 500 or
Right.
something like that. But when you take a single product like gold or precious metals, it's too easy to can be doing one thing technically one day, and then there's some major news event and it goes the opposite to what you were expecting.
So, Nick, a lot of interesting stuff came out this whole month too. Last week, we seen the UN came out and they called on the Fed and other central banks to halt on interest rates. What's your opinion on this? Will the Fed stay the course?
Well, the Fed's caught between a rock and a hard place. Like to reduce inflation, they need to increase interest rates to slow the economy down. Which seems to be their objective. But when you increase interest rates, the cascading repercussions tend to be real estate first. And we've seen declines in real estate. And they raise rates, like they say, another percentage point before the end of the year. You could see a collapse in real estate, then that will lead to a collapse in a lot of other markets at the same time. So that's a very tricky road for them to do. The UN is calling that the central bank should implement price controls, which have never worked. So.
In your opinion, sorry for cutting you off, Nick, do you think they'll just do one more rate hike and then do a pause, or do you think they're actually going straight to pausing rate hikes? What do you think will happen?
Oh, I think the one more rate hike isn't going to stop the inflation, and the inflation problem is kind of unique compared to other years because we've got an inflation due to lack of supply because supply chain problems and so on and so forth. So you got shortages of products coming up, and then you've got money printing like never before in history. So you got both of those things driving inflation. And while the official inflation rate is 8%, if you go to John Williams' site and who uses the older methodology that was in place in 1989, you get 18%, which is more realistic. But inflation really is needs to be measured personally. Like if someone is making $50,000 a year he's spending most of his money on food and housing. If someone was making 500,000 a year, those are like small percentages. So
Right.
the effect is different on different people according to their income.
Hmm. We're seeing too, Nick, all across the world due to inflation, protests. We see people, like, it's everywhere, South Africa, Middle East, South America, but we haven't seen them on a massive scale in the US and Canada. Why do you think that is, Nick?
Well, the problems are much worse in other parts of the world, but the thing is that the the citizens are protesting, but it seems like, first of all, it's not covered in the mainstream media.
Hmm.
You don't see any of that, and but secondly, they doesn't seem the government is being affected by the protests. Now, in some respects, some encouraging is the election in Italy, because
Right.
they seem to be by going in the opposite direction, and hopefully she's got really good security.
That's what I was thinking too, because I seen a speech of her talking about Macron, and she was exposing France, and oh, that's a strong lady.
Yeah, that's right.
Uh,
And it's interesting that also the woman that's running for governor of Arizona is very good as well, you know.
oh, is she?
Yeah. So the big question to me is whether the interim election will take place in November, because and it looks like almost a certainty that the Democrats will lose the House and maybe the Senate. Uh, and I think they'll move heaven and earth to avoid that. So the risk is that they'll create some emergency that they can then halt the election.
Really? Do you think that's going to happen?
It's a possibility.
Wow, that's interesting to talk about. If they do some kind of some kind of distraction or some kind of emergency to halt the elections, what do you think that would cause?
Well, there'll be people that are holding on because they have faith in the process of the election, and you take that away from them. The difference between, say the European countries, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and the States, and to a lesser extent in Canada, is in the States, the citizens have 400 million guns in their possession. So it's a different story, because the citizens of Europe don't have any guns and they've been taken away from them. So their ability to protest is limited. But in the States, push comes to shove, that's a different issue entirely.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. If you do see like halting elections or anything that serious, I think there would be a civil war, and it would be really crazy, don't you?
That's right. Maybe that's what the WEF and Klaus Schwab, want to have, is just total chaos, and
Probably.
to effect the Great Reset. To effect a reset, you have to tear the existing structures down. So,
Do you think that's when they'll roll out a central bank digital currency?
well, and several central banks are developing digital currencies, and if they move to digital currency, that's another major impact on our freedoms, because then they'll be able to control everything. If they don't like what you're doing, they cut you off from your account, that kind of thing.
Wow.
So um, that's the concern. And if the central banks issued digital currencies, you can be sure that they'll either make it, regulate the existing private digital currencies out of business or tax them out of business or something, because they won't want the competition.
Hmm.
So it makes it a very precarious position for the existing digital currencies.
So with all this economic chaos, where is Nick putting his money right now? Are you leaning more towards silver, gold, or both?
Well, I'm about equal gold and silver. Like I think in the end run, silver will outperform gold, and silver is also got more function, because if you have one coin, it's currently $25 or something like that. And if even if it goes up to $100, then you can still use it for grocery shopping or
Hmm.
effectively. But if gold goes to 5,000 or 10,000, and you have an ounce, how are you going to spend that?
You gotta chip some off.
I can't go to the grocery store. So that's one of the functions of silver from a practical point of view. So, but gold will be useful to buy large assets like land,
Hmm.
or businesses, even where uh, it's easier to transact. Otherwise, you'd need a truckload of silver, that kind of.
Well, Nick, we truly appreciate you coming down to the Wall Street Silver community. Like, really appreciate talking to you, and hopefully we can talk to you soon.
Okay, my pleasure. Anytime.